When my family first moved to North Carolina, we lived in a rented house, 3 blocks from the school where I would begin the 3rd grade. Here, when you looked out the window, you saw houses and people inside those houses. I'd hoped that in walking around after dark, I might witness a murder. But for the most part, our neighbors just sat in their living rooms watching TV. The only place that seemed truly different was owned by a man named Mr. Tomke, who did not believe in television. When fall arrived and school began, I saw the Tomke children marching up the hill with paper sacks in their hands. What must it be like to be so ignorant and alone? Could a normal person even imagine it? When David moves to a new town, he discovers the Tomkes, people in his neighborhood who do not own a television. When normal meets very weird, David learns a few lessons about generosity and flexibility in Us and Them by David Sedaris. Halloween fell on a Saturday that year, and I looked forward to going in disguise to the Tomke's door. But their house was dark. They had left a coffee can full of gumdrops, alongside a sign reading, "Don't be greedy." In terms of Halloween candy, individual gumdrops were just about as low as you could get, and it was insulting to be told not to take too much of something you didn't really want in the first place. The night after Halloween, we were sitting around watching TV when the doorbell rang. My mother's sisters and I ran downstairs to discover the entire Tomke family in costume on our front stoop. It seemed as they'd spent the previous evening isolated at the lake and had missed the opportunity to observe Halloween. "So, well, I guess we're trick-or-treating now, if that's okay," Mr. Tomke had said. Asking for candy on Halloween was called trick-or-treating. But asking for candy on November 1st was called begging, and it made people uncomfortable. This was one of the things you were supposed to learn simply by being alive, and it angered me that the Tomkes did not understand it. Why, of course it's not too late. Kids, why don't you go run and get the candy? I emptied my bag onto my bed, searching for whatever was the crummiest. My candy bars were brand name, and so I put them in pile number 1, which would definitely not go to the Tomkes. Out in the hallway, I could hear my mother straining for something to talk about. A boat! That sounds marvelous. Can you just drive that right into the water? Behind my mother's words were 2 things. The first and most obvious was, yes, I'm talking about boat trailers, but also, I'm dying. The second meant only for my sisters and me was, if you do not immediately step forward with that candy, you will never again experience freedom, happiness, or the possibility of my warm embrace. I knew that it was just a matter of time before she came into my room and started collecting the candy herself, grabbing indiscriminately with no regard to my rating system. Panicked by the thought of her hand on my doorknob, I began ripping off the candy bars and putting them into my mouth. Most were miniature, which made them easier to accommodate, but there was only so much room, and it was hard to chew and feel worried at the same time. I heard my mother tell the Tomkes she needed to check on something. And then I heard her open the door and stick her head inside my room. "What are you doing?" she whispered, but my mouth was too full to answer. I began breaking the wax lips and candy necklaces pulled from pile number 2. These were the second best things I had received, and while it hurt to destroy them, it would have hurt even more to give them away. I had just started to mutilate a miniature box of Red Hots when my mother pried them from my hands, accidentally finishing the job for me. BB-sized pellets clattered onto the floor, and as I followed them with my eyes, she snatched up a roll of Necco wafers. Not those! I pleaded, but rather than my words, my mouth expelled chocolate. Chewed chocolate, which fell onto the sleeve of her sweater. She shook her arm and the mound of chocolate fell like a horrible turd upon my bedspread. You should look at yourself. I mean, really, look at yourself. Along with the Necco wafers, my mom took several Tootsie Pops and half a dozen caramels. I heard her apologize to the Tomkeys for her absence, and then I heard my candy hitting the bottom of their bags. Well, I was in trouble for not bringing my candy sooner. My sisters were in more trouble for not bringing theirs at all. We spent the early part of the evening up in our rooms, and then, one by one, we made our way back downstairs. And like most normal families, ended our night with our parents watching the TV.